The Secret Science at Work by Max Freedom Long. Chapter 25. Conclusion. The prospect ahead is very bright, now that we have in sight the completion of the long investigation of Huna. The HRA, by the splendid work of its members over a period of nearly 5 years, has proved that those who have their paths sufficiently open to contact their high selves can put Huna to use after a short period of training, and after revising some of their old ideas on religion and psychology. The earnest persons who read this report, and who find, after a proper effort, that they cannot make Huna work, and who decide that this may be because they have unknown blockings in their paths, will need help of the foot-washing kind. Fortunately, such help is easy to give, and there are a great many who should be able to assist. I am thinking particularly of the good men and women who belong to the many progressive religious organizations in the world today. I do not know how many dedicated healers there are in New Thought circles or in other circles in which mental spiritual healing has been taught, but the number must be very large. These people are professional healers for the most part, and it has been my experience that they often welcome the information furnished by Huna and put it to use, despite the fact it is not officially recognized in the groups to which they belong. If I were convinced that my path was blocked and that I needed help in getting my high self supplied with mana, so it could begin working from the top downward to clear the path for me, I would look up one of the newer and more open and liberal churches and inquire what one of its healers was familiar with Huna and was ready to assist in opening my path. If none knew of Huna, I would introduce the subject and see that the proper people became acquainted with the literature on Huna. That done, I would continue to urge that one of the members take me in hand. Most of the old and established religious organizations, of course, will be content to go on with the old dogmatic views and beliefs that have replaced the doctrines of love and service. They will go on preaching hate programs in their pulpits and attacking blindly all churches and dogmas which they feel to be in competition with their own. The rediscovery of the inner teachings of Jesus will mean nothing to the older men in authority in most Christian churches. They will be so frozen in their dogmas and so fearful of the frozen state of belief of their older parishioners that they will refuse to give even the slight consideration to anything which attacks their dogmas. On the other hand, many eager and serious young men make the decision to become ministers. They go to special schools for their training, and their minds remain comparatively open for a time. It is barely possible that these men may be approachable and may be more inclined to understand Huna and even to use it, if such use is not prohibited entirely by those over them. Groups outside regular organizations may also be formed. A small group is always best because there can be work between friends. Two people who understand each other, trust each other, and are motivated by love form a church, in quotes, all by itself. Where 2 or 3 are gathered in my name, ... embodies this idea. Confession is a helpful thing, but it should be done in the greatest privacy, not as it has recently been done in some of the great religious movements where public confession degenerates into a contest between enthusiasts to see who can confess the most wicked deeds. The vow of inviolate secrecy which gripped Huna for so many thousands of years has become unnecessary, now that the darkness of mass ignorance and the savagery has lightened, and literacy and enlightenment is to be found the world around. However, there is one vow of inviolate secrecy which we cannot yet do without. This is the vow that every man and woman of good will must take and keep if agreeing to act as one to receive the confessions of another. In addition to the vow of utter and enduring secrecy as to the confession, there must be the greatest effort to remain entirely impersonal and to refrain from passing the slightest mental or inward judgment. Judge not, that ye shall not be judged, is the teaching here. One becomes, in accepting the obligation of hearing a confession, a substitute for the high self. One prays to the high self of the one who is about to bare his heart, and one sends a goodly supply of mana with the prayer which is made, asking that the misdeeds which are confessed to be shaken free at any point in which they form fixations or have attracted eating companions. The sending of the mana must never be forgotten, nor must one ever allow himself to forget that this is a sacred obligation and not a superstition of savages, as one dogmatic minister once called it in a letter to me. May I say again that faith, which Jesus showed to be something absolutely essential, is not simply an act of perfect belief. It is primarily an act of reaching out to contact the high self and then sending the mana and the thought forms of the prayer so that they may be made real, made into something veritable on the high self level first and later on the earth level as the answer to the prayer. Groups are also valuable in the training process. Telepathic practice and the box and pendulum work can often be carried on to the advantage in groups, especially to help the less experienced understand what to do and how to go about it. The low self learns from other low selves in a surprising way, and one who cannot use the pendulum may suddenly find himself doing it after watching another demonstrate the use of this simple instrument. A word of warning, however, needs to be said concerning the work in larger groups. There is usually a tendency to fall to arguing about things quite foreign to the purpose in hand. Often there is some person in the group who has a love of talking and who will insist on holding the floor. Then there are always those who wish only to be entertained and who will not or cannot take part in the serious work of learning to understand and to use Huna. No group shall allow new members to come into it after a course has been set and training begun. Let others form their own groups or wait until a new training session is begun, a session in which all will begin to work on equal footing. I once formed a group and left it open to new members and visitors. At each meeting, my friends happily brought with them people who had never heard of Huna, and at each meeting, I had to begin from the beginning and tell the new arrivals what Huna was and what we planned to do. Needless to say, oh goodness, needless to say, we accomplished nothing to speak of, because the older members soon grew tired and stayed away. Now that we have completed the full circle of investigation and have come back from the wisdom of the grass huts of Polynesia to that of Jesus, who trudged homeless with his disciples through Palestine, healing and instructing his chosen group, I believe that the knowledge of these ancient basic truths and symbols will gradually filter into organized Christianity from the bottom, if not from the top. It will spread more rapidly amongst the thousands who have become unwilling to accept the dogmas and the sterility of the Orthodox churches, and so have turned to the other sources of light and inspiration. The sheer workability of Huna, as attested by thousands of letters which I have received in the past several years, will guarantee that spread. It will not be too long before those who have set out to use Huna in their own lives and to help others will find companionship and mutual interest and understanding in an increasing number of those around them. I can envision a time not too many years ahead when men will have learned that the hurtless and kindly life is always the best, and that those who are truly blessed are the ones who have learned to love others as well as to be kind and hurtless. There will appear among us men and women who begin to bear the mark of the new age in their minds and hearts. They will be known by a certain characteristic which will at first seem very strange, very new, and very incredible. They will be utterly trustworthy to the limit of their human ability in every word, thought, and deed. They will be the men and women who have caught the gleam and who are moving quietly and strongly ahead toward graduation at the end of this life into the level of being occupied by the amakuas, the utterly trustworthy parental spirits. As these words are being written late in the year 1952, the long period of research and investigation seems to be coming to a close. There remains a little more testing to be finished, and then the HRA will have completed the work for which they were organized and can disband. My work with the HRA has been one of the bright spots in my life, and I wish, in closing, to thank again my many clear-seeing, selfless, and loyal friends of the organization, most of whom I know only through their letters and the telepathic contact of the prayer hours. Without their help, the restoration of Huna could not have reached this point.